As I open up my notebook and begin speaking to you this morning, I am performing one of the most frightening experiences known to humankind: public speaking. According to most studies, the number one fear of most people is public speaking. Number two is death. Death is number two. Now, does that sound right? I mean, that means to the average person that if you go to a funeral, you're better off in the casket than doing the eulogy. Well, I am not afraid of public speaking. I do have my fears. Just this past week, I was afraid that some of my actors that I'm directing in my current production were not grasping my direction. Was also afraid this last week that my laptop would never turn on again. I was also afraid that I would continue to experience insomnia because of those other two things. But none of my fears, none of those three fears kept me from functioning and going about my day. None of the fears I had this past week paralyzed me or held me captive. According to Wikipedia, that incredibly credible wealth of knowledge ever at our fingertips, fear is a feeling induced by perceived danger or threat. The ability to feel and experience fear is one of our basic innate emotions. Fears that are appropriate and reasonable are called rational fears. Staring into the face of an angry bear, or being suddenly surprised or startled by someone's sudden approach or touch to your body, those are rational fears. Rational fears keep us alive. Our body's reaction to fear is literally life-saving. The fear response arises from the perception of danger, followed by our desire to either confront the threat or run from it. Now that is known, as you've heard over and over, as the fight or flight response. When we encounter a perceived danger or threat, our bodies literally respond in such a way as to prepare us to either fight the danger or to run from it. We first experience a rush of adrenaline through our bodies. Our hearts begin to pound faster. We begin to sweat. We begin to breathe more rapidly. Increased muscle tension leads to a feeling that our hair is standing on end, and we experience goosebumps. We get butterflies in our stomach. All of these reactions are inborn reactions to danger. I would also call this a very fine description of stage fright. So when an average person is asked to stand up and speak in a public forum, the butterflies, the sweating, the breathiness, the fast speech is understandable now. The frightened speaker is experiencing the normal fight or flight response to the perceived danger of standing in front of a large group of people and bearing his or her soul. And if the speaker could just excuse herself from the podium for a moment and run away for a quick jog and then return, she would be better able to continue. In the running away, the natural physical response is dignified and acted upon. The body then burns some of the adrenaline, causing the rest of the symptoms to begin to subside. That's why when you're frightened, you get jumpy. You want to move your body. Some people literally run away a short distance when they've been frightened. Some people respond with big body movements, or they're jumping, or they scream, they clap, they laugh loudly, they move their bodies in unusually large gestures. Fears that are inappropriate and unreasonable are called irrational fears. We also call those phobias. Some of the most common phobias involve the fear of demons and ghosts, cockroaches, snakes, spiders, heights, water, enclosed spaces, tunnels, bridges, needles, and tests. When people encounter the trigger for their phobia, looking out the window of a tall building for those who have a fear of heights, riding in an elevator for those who are fearful of enclosed spaces, or being handed a test in a classroom, the very same Fight or flight responses begin to occur in their body. Their hearts race, they sweat, they feel like they can't breathe, they feel like they need to run away. I have long had claustrophobia. I have an unabashed fear of enclosed spaces. I think it probably all started the day my brother locked me in the hall closet when I was about 6 years old. Not sure, but I think so. Every time I face an elevator, which is just a large closet, I swallow, I take a big breath, and I send up a quick prayer. And if there aren't very many floors to go up, I look around quickly for the stairs, and if they're there, I take them. And if that isn't practical, I face the fear and I step on the elevator. What's the worst that can happen? Well, that I would be stuck in that box, in that closet, all by myself, alone. That I wouldn't be able to reach anyone and let them know that the elevator had stopped between floors, or that I couldn't open the door even though the elevator button shows that I have landed on the first floor. Totally irrational fear. I know that. I mean, they have phones in those elevators now, and I know that because of the time that I did get stuck in an elevator at Broad Ripple High School late in the day after all of the students and most of the staff had gone home. But there was a phone, and I was able to reach a human being. And after about passing out from breathiness in a very short time, I was released from my terror. But that memory and those feelings will never leave me. So when anyone begins to speak about irrational fears, I am right there with you. You have my compassion. We are one. The problem with fear, especially those irrational ones, is that they ruin our lives. They paralyze us. They keep us from joy. They keep us from love and experiences and connection and laughter. Those are beautiful life experiences that I don't want to give up. I don't think any of us want to shorten or limit the joy in our life. Ken Canyon has written a blog entitled, "There are two kinds of fear, and only one fear paralyzes us." In his blog, Ken describes the two kinds of fear this way. The first kind of fear is the fear that conquers us. This fear makes us feel human, vulnerable, and unwilling to take chances. It prevents growth and accomplishment. Ken goes on to say that this debilitating, paralyzing fear gives us despair and defeat. This kind of fear takes control of our lives and we stop living. If I decided to stay home because of my claustrophobia, because I don't ever want to have to ride another elevator or get on an airplane, because an airplane is just another box to be trapped in, I would be allowing my irrational fear to paralyze me, and then it would control my life. The second kind of fear is actually a productive fear. It's the kind of fear that people experience before doing something new or exciting, right on the verge of going down that hill, right on the verge of that new experience. Ken Canyon describes productive fear this way. This fear can enhance any experience, provide clarity and exhilaration. This kind of fear can be a powerful motivator. Ken then suggests that we spend some time thinking about our fears. He even suggests that we quickly list our fears and identify which ones are the kinds of fears that encourage us to push through to new experiences and which kind of fears are keeping us from moving forward. As you quickly do that in your mind right now, if you're having trouble deciding which of your fears are motivating or negative and paralyzing, here's a suggestion to help you divide them. If you feel panic and loss of control, you're not moving forward. That is a paralyzing, negative fear. When you react to danger, however, you are actually experiencing a healthy fear. When you run screaming from a small spider with the same intensity as you would when running from a burning building, you have an unhealthy fear. Finally, we need to decide that if our irrational, unhealthy fears are paralyzing us, how can we overcome that? How can we face those fears and try to move forward? Well, there are lots of approaches out there. And personally, I have found great wisdom in this simple statement. Change the focus. Don't focus on what you fear, but instead focus on what you want. Train yourself to think about the good things that you want in life. Although I have an irrational fear of enclosed spaces, an irrational fear of flying on airplanes, I practice changing the focus. On occasion, I want to be able to get to other places faster than I would be able to get to if I were driving. I want to experience travel. I don't want to be trapped. My desire for the good things in life have caused me to repeatedly face and overcome my fear of flying. So I make airplane reservations. I breathe heavily, but I fly. What do we fear that has stripped the joy from our lives? What fear is paralyzing us and halting our growth? Let's try shifting the focus from our fear, what we are afraid of, to what we want, what that fear is keeping us from. And then we might be able to slowly make changes that allow us to move forward. When we constantly fear that the worst will happen, our own thoughts may help to bring it about. Fear, an unnamed writer once said, is the wrong use of imagination. It is anticipating the worst, not the best, that can happen. A salesman was driving on a lonely country road one dark and rainy night and had a flat tire. He opened up the trunk. No lug wrench. The light from a farmhouse could be seen dimly in the distance, and so he set out on foot in the driving rain. Surely the farmer would have a lug wrench he could borrow. Of course, it was late at night, and the farmer might be asleep in his warm, dry bed, and maybe he wouldn't answer the door. And even if he did, he's probably going to be angry at being awakened in the middle of the night. The salesman, picking his way blindly in the dark, stumbled on. By now, his clothing and his shoes were soaked, and even if the farmer did answer the door, he'd probably shout something like, "What's the big idea waking me up at this hour?" And that thought made the salesman angrier. What right did that farmer have to refuse him the loan of a lug wrench? After all, here he was stranded in the middle of nowhere, soaked to the skin. That farmer was a selfish clod, no doubt about that. The salesman finally reached the house, banged loudly on the door, and a light went on inside and the window opened up above. "Who is it?" a voice called out. "You know darn well who it is." "It's me, and you can keep that blasted lug wrench. I wouldn't borrow it now if it was the last one on earth." The present doesn't exist when we are in that kind of state. We aren't open to possibilities or to miracles. We are trapped. Our minds are filled with fear. My prayer for each of us this morning is that we will find the strength and the courage to face the fears that have halted our growth and kept us from the good things in life. Amen. Thich Nhat Hanh has written, "Fear keeps us focused on the past or worried about the future. If we can acknowledge our fear, we can realize that right now we are okay. Right now, today, we are still alive and our bodies are working marvelously. Our eyes can still see the beautiful sky. Our ears can still hear the beautiful voices of our loved ones. In the midst of this Halloween season, we are somewhat brave. We find the ability to look fear in the face. We laugh at it. We dress it up in costumes. We celebrate it. But the truth is, some of our fears are keeping us from living our biggest, best, most possible life. Let's all spend some time together this week thinking about the role that fear plays in our life. Have a great Sunday. Go in peace. Amen.